Mary Hunt here at Water with Diann New on Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, particularly for those who will watch this later on after some of us are long gone from this earthly coil. And this morning we are dealing with a very exciting topic. Water and Women of Dignity are taking on the question of Catholic lesbians and queer women looking at women's ordination. Note roles, contributions, and expansive options. That's the full title. And I want to welcome you on behalf of Water. It's so nice to be together as we move into spring and feel new life around us. Thanks for joining us and making time for this important conversation on Catholic, lesbian, queer women and women's ordination. We applaud, as Water, the Women's Ordination Conference for its 50 years of faithful work, and we wish them well on their upcoming conference in Detroit. Marianne Duddy Burke will now welcome us on behalf of Dignity, and I welcome her back from a cruise on the West Coast. And I thank her and her cruising friends for getting up early to be on this Zoom. I hope you all had a wonderful time.
Thank you, Mary. Yes. Hi, everyone. It is wonderful to see you. Kathy Ann and I are in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, after spending a week on the Pacific Ocean with 12 amazing women. And it was just, every night was a Last Supper. It was just unbelievable to be there. But we are very, very happy to be with all of you today and excited for this ongoing partnership. Water and Women of Dignity have been hosting quarterly conversations for Catholic lesbians and friends for years and years now. I think this is one of our most joyful and successful partnerships that we have had. And I am very excited about this conversation today. I think it's such an important conversation to think about the ways in which we, as queer believers, shape the concepts of ministry, service, witness, priesthood, in all the ways. As somebody who felt from a very early age that I had a vocation to ministry, that was so aligned in my head with priesthood and ordination for many years. But through the counsel of wise and courageous queer people, I came to a totally different understanding of what ministry, service, and vocation all mean. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to share in conversation with all of you, and especially with esteemed and beloved guests, Marsie and Victoria, coming on. So I'll toss it back to Mary for the rest of the introductions and really look forward to an inspiring and provocative conversation.
Thanks so much, Marianne. We at Water begin all of our programs with a land acknowledgement to remind ourselves of why we do what we do and what we need to do more of, given the systemic injustice that Indigenous and other people of color face in this country. As a land acknowledgement, it's a beginning, it's not an end, but it's a time to reflect on our history and commit to justice making. We at Water sit on the land, the Indigenous land in Silver Spring, Maryland, that is the traditional and contemporary land of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples. We acknowledge the trauma and injustice toward Indigenous people and other people of color that is so deep in our culture and our history. We join in efforts to eradicate it and to make reparations for the genocide involved. Consider for a collective quiet moment the Native people on whose land you sit. Feel free to put their names in the chat if you wish. Let's take just a moment of quiet. Thank you. Water's work, whether intellectual, spiritual, or liturgical, is aimed to bring about social justice. Full stop. So in the shadow of May Day, with at least 3 wars raging in the world and gun violence on the rise, we dedicate this hour to peace. Our topic this morning is Catholic lesbians and queer women look at women's ordination, roles, contributions, and expansive options. We at Water thought about this in light of WOC's, the Women's Ordination Conference's anniversary, as so many lesbian queer women have been and are engaged in feminist ministries that have emerged in light of the institutional Roman Catholic Church's refusal to ordain women. I have long insisted as part of the women church movement that the needs of the world, not the failings of the church, set the agenda. the needs of the world only increase, for which every helping hand is required. It is, in my view, and you can quote me, a colossal stupidity, as well as deep injustice, to prevent women for reasons of sex and non-binary people for reasons of gender for testing our vocations to priestly ministry and being involved in all that that entails, especially decision-making or jurisdiction from the smallest to the largest decisions of the Catholic collective. Mary Hunt said, "It's a colossal stupidity and a deep injustice." What has emerged over 50 years in Catholicism is a wide variety of ways in which women and non-binary people contribute mightily to the collective ministry, serving not simply in parishes and with Catholics. We are people of all stripes who work with people of all stripes in an endless variety of ways, engaging in social work, teaching, working with people with substance problems, those who have been abused, working in medicine, the arts, and so much more. But for reasons of patriarchal recalcitrance, and nothing but patriarchal recalcitrance, Roman Catholic women are not ordained validly and licitly. But this has not stopped our ministries. In fact, without making a virtue of necessity, I think we've been endlessly more creative than we would have been had we been limited to the parochial parish scene. Nevertheless, this rejection has caused many of us to kick the Roman dust from our sandals and move on to broader spiritual lives. It has moved others of us to seek ordination in groups like the Roman Catholic Women Priests, the Association of Roman Catholic Women Priests, and the like. It has urged all of us to create our own ministries. The focus today is on the specific experience, both historical and contemporary, of lesbian queer women in all of this. As I said earlier, this is a dissertation waiting to happen. I dare say that without lesbian and queer women, the movement for women's ordination in the Catholic community would have been much less effective, and I can assure you it would have been much less fun. My theory, which I will leave for later, is that the additional layer of oppression that we experience as lesbian and queer women because of our sexuality has added to our insights and added to our urgency around ordination. Trans siblings also bring unique and important perspectives. In the interest of time today, we will focus on lesbian, bi, female-identified persons with a hope that another session in this series will take up the particular experiences of trans people. When I began to think about these issues, the two people who came to mind were Marsie Silvestro and Victoria Rue. Marsie was an early Women's Ordination Conference staff member, and Victoria was an early out lesbian ordained as a priest. They join us today to my delight and with my gratitude. Marsie Silvestro is a nonprofit organizational development consultant, an artist, a minister, and a spiritual director. Many of us know her blessing song by heart, and many in Dignity were at a retreat that she led several years ago. Marsie and her late partner, Robin, loved the Southwest. After Robin's untimely death, Marsie moved from New England, where she had spent most of her life, to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she and her cats now call home. Welcome, Marsie, my dear beloved friend, the person with whom I have had some of the deepest laughs of my entire life. Please share some of your insights into Catholic lesbians and queer women on the question of ordination. You know I love you.
I know, Mary. Where's Diann?
She's
Sorry,
right
Diann.
here, and she agrees.
I love
We'll
Diann.
talk about that, Marsie. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I because I have been with WAC since day one, since the first conference, I decided to do a little historical talk about what was going on and where we were. But also, I'd like to start with one of my poems from my first book called Feast of Sisterly Transformation. It's called Some Uppity Women, 1975 Detroit. Some uppity women sat on a church wall and pushed with their sisters to let it all fall. Now all the Pope's horses and all the bishop men couldn't put the male priesthood together again. So hickory, dickory, Vatican Palace, we don't need your permission to raise our own chalice. Since I was a little girl, probably about 4 years old, I played priest. My mother made my vestments. I had a little chalice. I put all my stuffed animals on the bed and I gave my own homilies. I think that's why now I'm a public speaking coach. They never answered back, but they got it. With a sense of justice was why I wanted to be a boy. Not because I felt trans or I felt trapped in my body. I just knew at an early age it wasn't fair that I couldn't be an altar boy, that I couldn't play baseball, even though I broke 2 church windows in my day with baseball in the schoolyard. And I told the nun we were too close. She didn't believe me. Anyway, so the first conference in Detroit, I was a campus chaplain at the University of Detroit, and I was able to go down the street basically to the conference, which was the first women's ordination conference to a renewed priestly ministry. And at that conference, they didn't define the renewed priestly ministry, in my opinion. So I didn't stand up when they said, "Are you called to priestly ministry?" Because I didn't know what the new renewed priestly ministry really meant. But at that time, as time went on after that conference, we started to have different walk organizations across the country. And I was living in New York City at the time, so I joined the New York Walk and became very active in that. And most of the people in that group were lesbian women. So since the first moment of having a walk group in different states, New York was run pretty much by lesbian women. And our biggest event was an all-night vigil at the United Nations where we slept on the streets. And we were protesting because Pope John Paul II was coming to town. And that was the Pope and we were able to be after the morning when the Pope was going to St. Patrick's Cathedral. About 30 of us walked in with our blue armbands on and stood near the altar with him in protest. And that's when Teresa Kane also got up to speak and asked for women's ordination. So there were many times that I would say out loud to the women that were there, let's just take a moment and realize that we are creating herstory. That this moment in time, we are lesbian, straight, gay, whatever we called ourselves in those moments, we were there creating a historic moment. And I think many a time we forgot that, or we didn't realize that that was what we were doing. And so I was on New York Walk, and then they were looking for people on the board for the national office, which was at that time in Rochester, New York. And at the first conference, I met a very powerful woman, Rosalie Muschel Reinhardt, who got up and said in one of her talks, "My name is Rosalie Muschel Reinhardt. I am a mother of 5 children, and I am a priest." And I remember I said to myself, I was 25 years old at that first conference, and I said, I want to grow up to be like her. Well, as time went on, Rosalie and I became mentors to each other. But that because I knew Rosalie, she was on the national board, in the national office then, Ada Maria Sassi Diaz, Joan Sabala, and later for a year, Mary Hunt joined us. And I was on the staff at that time. And long story short, there was some contention between 2 women on the board, on the national office. And I became the director of the women's ordination, the executive director by default. It was her fault and her fault. And then people said, tag, you're it, Marsie. So I was the first, as we know, out lesbian director of the Women's Ordination Conference. And during that time, I had the opportunity to travel around the country to different states and work with different groups to talk about who we were. And there were many closeted women at that time. But I think the gift that lesbians gave is many of us who were standing in the feet of who we were also gave other women permission to come out. I saw a lot of straight women say, I'm done, I'm divorcing my husband, I'm claiming who I am. So it was, and other women religious, it was a time that those of us who were who we were and claimed who we were, also began to be sort of the prophet in the middle of the crowd, allowing other people to be who they were, and also to claim their sacredness. I think the greatest gift, a couple of things Women's Ordination Conference did. During that time, as we all came out claiming our priesthood, our ministry, or who we were, that was the time when the Catholic lesbian group began. New York Dignity started. I remember doing a retreat with New York Dignity when they were first becoming who they were, about planning and how we're going to act. Got hooked up with Boston Dignity to protest against ordination. So it was a time really of weaving each other in support and to claim who we really were. I think that was important. And from the first conference, I went to the second conference in 1968 in Baltimore, where we marched in the streets with a big styrofoam anchor. You know, they're right on the water, the anchor of hope. And we had styrofoam chains. We made a huge chain and it was all around us. And we were chanting ordained women, and women came out from buildings and looked out the window and said, "What are you doing?" And we yelled up, "We want ordination for women." And they came out, "I'm taking my lunch now," or whatever. So it was that visibility of who we were that women started joining us. We had sort of protests at Lafayette Park. It's where the bishops were at the Hilton Hotel. We were singing, we were marching. They're peeking out of their curtains. We could see them. We also had a protest at what we call the Tattoo Tit, which was the Immaculate, what's the name of that big play? Immaculate Heart of Mary Chapel? Or
The Basilica of Our Lady in the National Shrine,
that's right, the National Shrine, which we all called the Tattoo Tit.
Or the National Crime, depending, but go ahead.
Yeah. So we were where we could be, being as visible as we could. We had the money with St. Teresa in it. We went into the churches and dropped the play money. We will not give anything to the church until you ordain us. We dressed as priests. We did whatever we could to be as visible as we could. And there was some question, you know, when I became the director.
Marsie, one more minute if you can.
Okay. When I became the director, is whether or not we should do more for the lesbian community. People were beginning to realize that we were the core, and how do we keep that kind of balance between who we were. For my one more minute, I asked Mary to give me that. When I was the national director, my father was dying. He had lung cancer. And he was moved. I'm from the New Haven, Connecticut area. The first hospice in bed hospice was in Branford, Connecticut. And my father went to a hospice for the first day. And my mother said, I came from a very liberal, supportive Italian Catholic family. And my mother said she wanted last rites, for my father. And I'm like, the national direct walk, I'm like, if this priest is really a jerk, I'm having this moment. And I had to let that go and say, this is your mother's partner of almost 50 years. It's her husband, her lover. Stop it. Long story short, my father at that time, the cancer had spread all through his body and he was shaking like this. And the priest came in and he was wonderful. He mentioned my brother, my sister, my mother, my name. And he leaned over to my father, and I was right next to my father and my mom on that side. And my dad was shaking, and he said, "Al, I'm Ed. I'm a priest." And my father grabbed my hand, shaking. And he said, "This is my daughter. She's a priest too." And that was my ordination for me. And that's what I think all of us in our visibility gave. We didn't need hands on us. We didn't need that. We became women church. We honored our ministries, and we stood in the presence of who we were, so that all of us would be known as sacred, ministerial, and a lesbian. That's it.
Thank you, Marsie. Thank you, Al.
Yeah.
He's such a candy every Valentine's Day. That much I can remember.
Yeah, every Valentine's Day. One thing I didn't, can I just put a little thing in there? And the second, when we were in Baltimore, Dolly Pomerleau was the head of the conference, and they had men singing there. I was livid. I went up to Dolly and I said, "How can you have these boys singing at the window?" She says, "If you want the music, Marsie, you better write it." And that was my call. And I wrote every song since all the conferences. I wrote all the national theme songs and everything. And the blessing song became sort of the movement song. So
It is the anthem, Marsie, without a
yeah,
doubt. Thank you so very much.
yeah,
I knew we had to hear from you this morning. Thank you so very, very much.
you're welcome.
Again, thank you to your late father. We turn now to Victoria Rue to address the issues of lesbian experience in priesthood and ministry. Who better? Victoria Rue is a Roman Catholic woman priest, a theater writer, a director, an actor, whose work is simply brilliant and not to be missed. She's a retired lecturer in comparative religious studies at San Jose State University. She lives in the Bay Area with her partner, Catherine Pothig, where they and their friends are active on a variety of social justice fronts. Victoria, welcome to you, and please share your wisdom in this movement. It's so great to have you, and what a wonderful segue from Marsie to you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks very much. And Marsie, always inspiring. Bless you indeed. I want to talk today with you all about my ordinations. Not the one I was excommunicated for, but the one that actually consecrated me a priest. October 1987, Cardinal Ratzinger writes his Halloween letter. Homosexuality is intrinsically morally disordered. Members of Dignity, New York City, once a month, stood silently in pews all over St. Patrick's Cathedral during Cardinal O'Connor's sermons. And in December 1987, the Cardinal calls the cops, and everyone, all the Dignity folks, were dragged out of the church onto Fifth Avenue. I was at Union Theological Seminary in New York and not thinking about ordination. And in January 1988, I received a call from gay activist Charles Frederick of Dignity. "Will you be our priest next Sunday?" On that bitter cold Sunday, wearing a priest's vestments, I stood with an out gay male priest, and together we celebrated a lesbian gay liberation mass on the sidewalk across from St. Patrick's Cathedral, saying no to Ratzinger. 300 people spilled out onto Fifth Avenue. Walt Whitman's "I Sing the Body Electric" was one of the readings. And after our ecclesial disobedience, many of us laid down on Fifth Avenue and did civil disobedience and were arrested. It was this community that ordained me. This was my ordination, an experience that shaped everything that followed. For 4 months, we continued on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, celebrating an LGBTQ mass, offering bread to passersby, laying down on Fifth Avenue, and then being arrested. And in June, I moved to California, and the Cathedral Project went on for several more years. By 1993, now living on the West Coast, I was finishing doctoral work and co-founded with a group of lesbian and straight women a critical mass, Women Celebrating the Eucharist. We cleaned the city park in Oakland, where St. Mary's Cathedral had stood before the 1986 earthquake, fed the homeless, and then celebrated a feminist mass where there was no presiding priest. That group continues as a house church today. Years later, in 2005, when I chose to be ordained by women bishops and friends assembled on a boat on the St. Lawrence Seaway, it was largely symbolic. But it was important because, number one, I hoped it was going to be the beginning of an international movement for women's ordination. And two, I hoped it would be different from WOC, Women's Ordination Conference, because it was an action rather than an inspiring idea. However, the early movement was focused on the ordination of women priests. My out lesbian identity was not something anyone wanted to emphasize. People were concerned, and I colluded with that. But soon after, our movement of RCWP began to publicly embrace and celebrate lesbian, gay men, trans, and non-binary queer priests. So, that's my priesting journey. 42, 47, 59. Not my measurements, but my ages during ordinations. During ordinations and priesting. Less a noun than a verb for me. In many ways, priesting is what Nell Morton called hearing people into speech. At age 79, I realized that for the last 40 years of my life, I've been priesting in many forms. Traditional priesting in founding and pastoring a small faith community in San Francisco, hospice chaplain, teaching comparative religions, teaching theater, creating theater with women with cancer, senior women who had abortions pre-Roe, Palestinians living in Bethlehem, creating theater with Christians and Muslims as they pondered who Mary and Marianne is. If half my life has been priesting in many forms, then what is ordination to me? Most importantly, a community ordained me. It is not being special or unique. It is not being set apart. That is the church's deadly game of hierarchy and power over. A community ordained me to live a consecrated life serving others, but widening that serving to working for social justice, widening those sacraments to include the mysteries of the cosmos, wonder at all life crackling and struggling around us. But make no mistake about it, the process of living a consecrated life is like a potter's kiln. It can be a fiery place where being one's lesbian, transgressive self is in itself transformative. What then is consecration? Consecration is not about making something holy. It is about making something whole. Dedicating my life to what the Beguines called becoming what God is. And what is God? I hear God, the source, calling in the trees, a star, a dragonfly, myself, in all matter. This is incarnation, not just a one-time event in the historical Jesus. All matter is incarnating, as Diarmuid O'Mearchew has said. Each tree or star reveals God the source in a particular way. This source is energy. Matter is congealed in energy. Energy does not die. This life energy continues to evolve, to transform, and yes, to resurrect anew. This energy, God, is becoming, is unfinished as we are. And as Dorothy Day says, we are called to engaged living. Quantum theory calls it entangled. From the future, from the not yet, our oneness with all that is will manifest. And at the same time, our feet are on the earth as we walk with the poor, we feed the hungry, we break laws that are unjust, we stand with the marginalized, we leave no one or no thing outside our circle of love and dignity. Be assured of this. What each of us does best, we must do, and do it now. Our future depends on it. So if you ask me what the future holds, it holds us, if we dare to live it out loud. Thanks.
Thank you, dear Victoria. A wonderful, thought-provoking, stretching presentation. I only wish the whole group in Detroit were with us now, both those in 1975 and those who will gather at the end of the month, because what you and Marsie have done this morning, I think, has both clarified the reality and stretched the parameters at the same time. And on behalf of the group, I thank you. I'd like to invite now our own Marianne Duddy, Executive Director of Dignity, to just share a few very brief thoughts on this question. And in light of these two presentations, Marianne, just a comment or two will be fine. And then we'll turn to Diann New of the most beloved category from Water to say something about ordination from her perspective. And these will just be quick comments, and then we'll eventually move to the entire group to have conversation. It is rich beyond imagining already. Marianne and then Diann.
Absolutely. And I feel like the 50th anniversary conference for women's ordination actually started today. This is the kickoff event, and it couldn't have been better. So thank you for both Marsie and Victoria for just totally changing the definition of ordination from what most people, I think, in the wider world see it, and speaking the truth of what I believe it should be. I have three little jump off points from what you said before we all engage in deeper conversation. The concept of ordination as recognition and affirmation by those who are served and those to whom we minister in the context of community, it is just such a transformative and dangerous idea. There is nothing hierarchical about it. And I think that is why there is so much fear in Rome of women's connections, and the truth that women dare to live. So, point one. Secondly, the tragic suppression of our queerness in so many justice movements is a continuous theme. We've seen it in so many ways, and yet the speaking of truth that it is queer people, and often queer women, who are the folks who dare to take on these injustices from the outset, who provide that spark, who provide that utter contradiction of the status quo, and who dare to speak up and challenge it. I think that is just such an important thing to call out for us, and to speak the truth, and to understand that, we often provide the spark, and then this layer of acceptability is coated over it so often, and how we have to kind of work through to reclaim this. And the third point I was thinking about, and Victoria, I think you were starting to get to this a little bit at the end. One of the issues that often comes to me when I think about the whole question of how women serve, women's ordination, is the ways in which I think the ecumenical and interfaith movement have actually been built and sustained by the number of Catholic women who moved to other denominations or other faith traditions where they could get some kind of official recognition of their gifts, their call, their service, who could have some influence in a denominational or traditional religious structure. And how that is often such a loss for us in the Catholic women's community, but how often those relationships, those dear, close relationships, are sustained, have been sustained across the boundaries of denominational lines, and how that is one of the ways in which interreligious collaboration, inspiration, sharing is being maintained. And maybe we'll get to some of that later, but I think that's just an aspect of the impact of refusal of ordination of women is having in the world. So.
Yes, thanks, Marianne. All 3 points very well taken and well put. Just imagine in your mind's eye Pope Leo XIV standing next to Archbishop Sarah Malali, and imagine as I said in my article earlier on, the bishops should be hanging their heads in shame until their mitres fall off. To suggest and to ordain 10 men in Rome the day before she arrived. And of course, had she arrived ready for ordination, he wouldn't have ordained her. I rest my case. Diann New, we'd love to hear from you. Unmute, please. I know you're on your phone. Can you unmute? Carolyn, can you unmute Diann? Diann's having tech trouble
Got
today.
it.
There you
I'm
go.
having tech problems. Okay.
Go ahead. Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thanks, everyone. Clearly, Catholic lesbians and queer women have been at the heart and soul of the women's ordination movement. Look around your screen. What amazing lesbian queer women are here. And we're paying a price for being part of bringing about the new priestly ministry. Since everybody tapped into their priestly call, I'm going to do mine very quickly. My call to priesthood given to me at birth and baptism when my mother's water broke and birthed me is shaped and reshaped by being a lesbian in a partnered relationship. I understand the importance of loving, including everyone at the table, LGBTQIA plus people and those who are on the margins. My first real wake-up call was when I led May processions. We're in that season now. In our neighborhood, an ecumenical, even non-Christian neighborhood, I processed people up and down the street. We buried our dead animals. That was the beginning of my priesthood. Then when I was teaching a religion class at Ladywood High School, I was like 24. We were talking about presents. I had bread on the table. We were in an inner room. The bell rang for the changing of the classes and the students would not move. Something happened that I had to pay attention to that was the presence of the divine among us, and the girls got it. I went to the Jesuit School of Theology in Berkeley. My class ordained me at the end of my studies on a rooftop overlooking the bay, and they called me forth to empower women worldwide. And they gave me all the gifts of ordination, which I won't review at this time. My own liturgy work has always been, where were the women? Where are the women? What were the women doing around prayer, around ritual, around spirituality? So it's out of that I then come into the movement or realized my own place, which was not to be, I was ordained, but to use my gifts for the creation of communities. So as I look at our roles, they are expansive. From doing organizational leadership, and I'm including all of us who are called to ordination in various ways. We do organizational leadership, creating inclusive Eucharistic communities, thinking and acting from the margins, making a seat at the table for everyone, doing social justice outreach, advocating for change, being a thorn in the side of the kyriarchy. We minister. We're theologians, we're songwriters, we're playwrights, we're spiritual directors and companions, counselors, justice coordinators, keepers of the faith. We are doing new priestly ministry, if we want to hold on to that term. And our contributions are countless. We create meaningful prayers, we compose and play music, we design and officiate at liturgies and sacraments like weddings, funerals, baptisms, reconciliation, anointing of the sick, and Eucharist. We call forth and empower the discipleship of equals. We organize inclusive communities. We write articles, books, music, and liturgies. that reflect the theology and spirituality of the LGBTQIA plus community. We are doing new priestly ministry. And our expansive options, well, we're doing it. We keep expanding them. We keep being called for more. So the question is, do we need ordination in the Catholic Church? I have to confess, Catholic lesbians and queer women we know are ordained already. We've just heard lots of testimony. The Catholic Church needs to lift the excommunications. I think the Archbishop of Canterbury, as you put before us, Mary, Sarah Mullally, reminds us of why women and non-binary people need to be ordained or need to be recognized that they are ordained. They image Christ. They were active leaders in the early Christianity. They're called to ordain ministry. They're role models and offer different perspectives that are desperately needed. We are these people. At the heart of all of it, I think it's about loving. We're called to love. How do we love? And how does that love birth more and more? That's what I'd like to leave us with. Regardless, my ordination is calling me to love and to love more, which puts it right fully center into the gifts of Catholic lesbian and queer women. Mary, back to you.
Thanks, Diann. Thanks, Marianne, Marsie, Victoria. We're off to a great start here with much more conversation to be had. I'd like to simply add 3 very short points. One is that it would be important to hear from women of color, and especially women of color who are lesbian and queer about their experiences. We're not doing that today, but I wish we were. But I think we can say that even in the presence of white lesbian queer women in the ordination movement, our presence was a step in the direction of intersectionality. And in that sense, it may have been part of the groundwork for anti-racism work. Our presence as different and our being out about it, claiming it, as has been said so well, was a strategy, I think, as part of a strategy to declericalize the church and to expand the parameters of ministry. And therefore, although I regret that we do not have our colleagues of color, for reasons obvious that it was much more difficult for them, it continues to be much more difficult for them, and we as white women have no reason to ask them to put that difficulty on display. But I like to think that our own taking on of the responsibility of being different was at least one little brick in the foundation of an intersectional analysis for the Women's Ordination Conference movement. The second thing I think has been alluded to, and that is the importance that our presence has meant and means to LGBTQ plus people who are partners in ministry, as Marianne said, so that we're ministering with and for our own. And we care for those whom the institutional church has rejected in a systematic way. Women, as you know, were involved at the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, caring for and burying mostly men. Marianne's long presence as a dignity leader and a public face is key to shaping the conversation among progressive Catholics who cannot ignore or forget about us. That's what you do, Marianne, in the core on the core team. We cannot be forgotten as women, not as the overwhelming Catholic male gay presence now even in the progressive sector, overwhelmingly male. And yet you and others like us are proof that it is not simply Catholic men, although they have the money, the power, and the connections to do the work. Your longtime presence is very important. But and another question is who but lesbian women have led the celebrations of life of so many of our friends. I think of Kathleen Kane of blessed memory in a service that so far surpassed any that a church could have offered. Think about that. And think about Come to the Table, which our own Patricia Russell does. There's so many examples of this work. And what Patricia does with Come to the Table is to literally invite everybody to the table, bar none, by Zoom, be there, enjoy it, you're part of it. Guess what? She's got a girlfriend. It's so, it pales. I know there she is, the great Mary Jane, pales by these. This is so absurd. This is what I said, it's just a colossal stupidity that this means anything to anyone other than the fact that it's wonderful. And finally, I would say, There are special issues for lesbian, queer, bi, trans nuns, which relate especially to celibacy and the perceived propriety of women religious. I will let them explore those issues and share them as they wish on another occasion if they wish. But for today, I simply want to say with the deepest love and regard for any who are with us or any who will watch this, we see you. We thank you. We love you and we embrace you. Because it has been very tough, I think, for women in religious communities to find their way on this question as out lesbians, fully out and proud and available and in leadership. And so we do see you and we embrace you. With that, the floor is open. Please use your raise hands button bottom under the react. Raise your hand. No, not that one. Don't do that one. Don't do that one. You want this one. Okay? It's this one. And then you lower your hand, and that will put you up in the queue for conversation. So the floor is open. Please go ahead. We will go until about 12:25. Diann has a brief moment of prayer for us, and then we will give the closing announcements and end as between 12:30 and 12:45, and we'll keep the Zoom open for people who want longer conversation, but we will respect everybody's schedule. So floor is open. Go ahead, and thank you. Patricia Russell recently mentioned.
Yeah, recently mentioned. So, I was aghast of 79 Victoria, and just reminded of myself and the crowd over here in this room that we're all really getting, up there, and amazingly. But I'm very aware of the word disability. Or as my neighbor across the hall, who has only one arm, handicapable. And I think that we need to just remember that as we go forward, and really in our inclusiveness, really remember everybody has something, and I think we need to just be aware of it, because people are struggling, people are without hope, and I'm going to throw that into the disability category. So let's just keep that in our forefront.
Spot on, Patricia Russell. Spot on. Who will be next? Thank you. And if you can't raise your hand, just do this. If you can't raise the button, do the button. Yes. Is it Mamie? Amy?
May. Thank you, everybody. This has been a wonderful hour. I'm a lesbian. I am a Kohenet, a Hebrew priestess, ordained, and a priestess for the last 25 years of Oshun in Yoruba tradition. And I wanted to make a request. I am teaching a course again. I teach in Africana Studies at William and Mary, and I'm teaching a course that I haven't taught for about 10 years called Female Gods and Priests. And when I did it before, I had a speaker from the Woman Church movement. I'd like to do that again, and if anybody would like to join me in that, I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you so much, and how wonderful to have you part of this conversation. Please come again, and be aware that a lot of these folks who are talking here would be very happy to be with you, I'm sure. And I'm sure you could have your pick at this point. Marsie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, there's a great book I just got called Excavating Women, The Archaeology of Leaders in Early Christianity. It really goes back to talk about the cultures in the early Christian churches or before that, as well as the archaeological evidence there are now finding of women who were priests or in that level of work in communities. So that would be a good book to think about. But The one thing I want to say too about the Women's Ordination Conference is that we always had round tables at the conferences. And I think the reality was that those round tables became confessionals. Women were able to tell their stories of pain, whether it was abortion, divorce, coming out, whatever. It was a place of safety. I worked in domestic violence for 20 years. And if you take the power and control wheel, if you go online, there is one now for the church or spiritual. And that also made me realize, why am I asking the patriarchal abusive scene to ordain me when in fact I already have claimed my power? And I think that's the thing that the ordination conference gave, was the rise of feminist theology, the work of inclusion, but a safe place for women to tell their stories. And I remember, Diann, I don't know if you remember this, when I think it was our first national board meeting. We were outside someplace, I can't remember the small group, and it was the first time we all did liturgy. And we were all sure we were going to be struck by lightning. Remember, we were like, oh my God, we're going to be struck by lightning. And it was we were the lightning that came into us was, it opened our eyes that we had the power and the ability not only to do liturgy, but to be liturgy. And you kind of alluded to this. We would have been nowhere without the storytellers, the musicians, dancers, Kathy Ann, and all the other women who danced. And it was a place where women could use their talents. And it arose a character called the Regina Caeli, who was the Blessed Virgin Mary come back to tell you it wasn't what you thought it was. And it was a place where we could laugh and just let a woman in history tell you it's not the way it was. And she came back as a Jewish mother to talk about her son and that things weren't the way you thought they were. So it was a place to laugh, to cry, and to really claim your power. I think that was one of the movements. But the biggest one for me was when we merged with Women Church right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, 7,000 women from around the world. And the theme was, and I wrote the theme song, "We are weaving a revolution." And I think now that song would be, "We are weaving and claiming our evolution," because we're realizing we are all the leaders of our communities and we do our ministry, and we don't need anyone to tell us that we can't do that. That's what I want to say.
Thanks, Marcie. Absolutely. And if you haven't seen the Regina Caeli, I'm sure there are videos. It has to be a video of it somewhere. We might have to commission one, because it is truly one of the funny things of in this world. I also want to just mention a topic that I'm working on, which is the veneer of virtue. And I think that part of what the Catholic Church's sexual abuse pandemic has been about is the veneer of virtue. And I think that for men in power in the religious world, that there has been the veneer of virtue. Cesar Chavez, I'm looking at you. Jean Vanier, I'm looking at you. John Howard Yoder, I'm looking at you. The veneer of virtue. And I think that that veneer of virtue has been a way in which patriarchal spirituality has functioned the way power and money function in the Epstein world. And that once we tease out some of those parallels, we're going to see something very new here, the veneer of virtue. So I'm working on that, and happy to share it as I proceed. But I do think that that is another thing that we have never had. We have not only not had the veneer of virtue, but we have been dissed. We have been told that we're not as good. I remember one case where someone said, "Oh, you don't even know the number of places where you're not being invited because you're a lesbian." Imagine to say that to someone. You don't even know the places you're not being invited because you're a lesbian. And you should be. I mean, I hope this person was doing the work to make that different. But that's what I think we're up against. And I think we have to be very honest about it. The floor is open. Shall we move to prayer, Diann? Or does anyone want to have another word at it? Trudy, go ahead.
I just want to say how wonderful it is to be in the presence of all you wonderful, spiritual, beautiful women. And it really just perks me up. And I do miss community. I don't have dignity here. We get to San Francisco once in a blue moon, and haven't been to a women priest since it was going to San Francisco. So I'm fortunate to see Victoria and maybe be able to connect to Walnut Creek again. So just thank you for uplifting my mind, body, and soul.
And thank you for being here and being exactly what you've just described us to be. Who's next? Victoria. Unmute, please, dear.
There. I reached out to a couple of much younger women who are members of RCWP and Roman Catholic women priests, and I'd like to just read a couple of quick quotes that they gave me, just to make sure that their voices are here with us.
Thank you.
Jen O'Malley, who is a queer, calls herself a queer priest, was ordained in 2012, and she puts it, being queer and a woman and a priest has deepened my understanding of what it means to be excluded. In turn, my commitment to the gospel call of radical belonging has also been deepened. Another woman who is in her 30s, Annie Jaresh, who will be ordained a priest in June, she puts it, as an out queer woman who is about to be ordained a priest, I believe we need healthy spiritual leaders who are living in integrity with their own eros. I think it's Jen, very important in terms of what you were saying, Mary, about aligning ourselves with those who have been excluded, and Annie's bringing the whole notion of eros into the picture, particularly with healthy spiritual leaders, which has been sadly lacking in the Catholic Church.
Exactly. And yet and rejected when it shows its lovely face, rejected. I mean,
Yes.
that's the irony of this experience, is that when I look around this group and when I think about other women and non-binary people engaged in ministry, the healthiest ones, the ones who have, and especially those who are lucky enough, and I think it's mostly luck, to have good, healthy relationships, who could be a resource, who could help young women to think of, some of us could help young women to understand what it is to love over a long period of time. You get lucky in love, and then there's a long period of time. What happens in that time? What does it mean? That's a ministry all its own. Have that absolutely rejected out of hand, and by gay men, I might add.
Yes.
Gay men, and I should say, in the leadership of some of the now several gay men's organizations, to have that left aside, bracketed, brought in on the margins, maybe on a good day for a little bit. All that's missing. So we have work to do to develop that kind of presence, I think, in that kind of ministry. So don't think that just because you're, pushing 80, Victoria and others, that, this is not going to happen. This is the work ahead. This is Patricia Russell. I'm looking at you. This is the work ahead. This is Mary Jane. Absolutely. This is our work. This is our work.
Nice.
Rand. Marcie, one last thing, and then we're going to turn.
And I think, I'm mentoring a lot of young women, part of my work, but also I think the reality is we have to continue to teach about misogyny. Misogyny is under so many things, a lot of it, most of it. And I think we have to keep teaching what that is. That's what I'm finding more and more, and it's not a single lens time in our world anymore. It's a kaleidoscope. And I think that's what many of us who were in the movement, the women's ordination movement, began to realize. We need each other to move forward and evolve and claim who we truly are in our ministerial gifts and in our self. That's what I say.
Yeah, and that's why the conversation with women from other religious traditions who are in ministry is so important. We've done some. I'm going to turn now to Diann for just a moment of prayer, and then Marianne, I'll turn to you to give a couple of announcements from Dignity, and I'll close up with Waters, and then we'll leave the floor open for continued conversation, but I want to honor people's schedules. Go ahead, Diann. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let's take a deep breath of gratitude for our time together. Thank you. Merci, gracias, danke, sheshe, for creating Marsie, Victoria, Mary, Marianne, Diann, and your LGBTQIA plus siblings in your image and calling us to ministry. Each of us is a gift in your sacred creativity. You call us to create a beloved community, an inclusive church, a discipleship of equals. You challenge us to be your presence, your uppity women, becoming what God is, energy and engaged living. As we send one another forth to do the challenging work of love, mercy, and justice worldwide, we remember that we do this indebted to the ones who have come before us. They've inspired hope and resistance. So let's go forth in all directions of the cosmos to bless and to embrace, to forgive and to heal, to welcome and to sanctify. Let us go forth to the unhoused and to the hospitable, to the hungry and to the full, to the thirsty and to the justice seekers and the lawbreakers. Let us go forth to the elderly and to those who seek wisdom, to the exiled and those who understand freedom, to the hopeless and to those who dream visions. Let us go forth to church leaders who are unable to perceive the needs of their people, to government officials who ignore the cries of the poor, to world leaders who reject the movements of peace. Let us go forth to people of every race and place, to the young and to the old of every neighborhood, to the next generations and to their children of every nation. Let us go forth in the name of divine wisdom, Sophia, the goddess of love and liberation, the Holy One of power and justice. Let us go forth to proclaim feminist ministries. Let us go forth to heal the world. Amen. Blessed be. Let it be so.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Diann. Lovely prayer. Marianne, Duddy, Burke, would you like to make the announcements for Dignity?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Diann, for the prayer of gratitude and commissioning. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Just two quick announcements from Dignity. First of all, a reminder that there are still a few spaces open at the Women of Dignity retreat, open to all. At the end of this month in Racine, Wisconsin. I believe the closing date for registration is now on Monday. I'm looking to Mary Kay. Yeah, Monday the 4th. So if you need any more information about it, please contact dignitywomen@gmail.com. And there are scholarships available to help either with registration, transportation. We want this to be accessible. Please, dignitywomen@gmail.com if you'd like to go. And again, the Women of Dignity meet Monday evenings, about every other Monday. I just want to make sure that everybody got the announcement that the gathering that was originally scheduled for Monday the 4th has been pushed to the 11th. So this month, I believe we'll be meeting on the 11th and on the 18th, and really want to encourage people to join them. On the 18th, we'll be talking about the ongoing need for women and female leadership within Dignity USA. So an important conversation relevant to today. All are welcome to any of these conversations. Thank you, and thank you again to Water for another in an extraordinary series of conversations and gatherings. Mary, back to you.
Thanks so much, Marianne. I'll be brief as well. Water meditation will be on the 11th, Monday the 11th at 7:30 with Cynthia Tootle. It will be on the goddess Kuan Yin and the need for compassion. And this was prompted by Cynthia Tootle, knowing that 150 girls were killed in Iran at the early days of the war in their school. She couldn't herself, but moved directly to Kuan Yin. Feminist Liberation Theologians meeting on May 13th, Wednesday, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. We're going to have two meetings so that we can accommodate, on the one hand, the people from the East, and on the other hand, the people from the West. So we're hoping that the Europeans will be with us at 1 o'clock, and that the Australians and those in New Zealand, et cetera, will be with us at the 7 o'clock meeting in the evening. So 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. will be the times for the mid-year meeting of the Feminist Liberation Theologians about a world at war. And if you want to get together with a group of international people and find out how we in the U.S. are perceived, that will be an occasion to hear it. Also to hear their insights about where that war is going. So everybody's invited to that meeting. It's our mid-year Zoom meeting. And then finally, Water Liturgy on the 26th, on Tuesday, the 26th at 7:30 with Diann New and the Water Community. Celebrate beauty at this beautiful time of the year. With things now in bloom. So celebrating beauty in the midst of all the chaos and hideous morass in which we find ourselves. With that, I thank you all for this informative and very moving session. Our next Women in Dignity and Women of Dignity and Water event will be on Sunday, September the 13th, 2026, same time, same station, 11:30 a.m. Dignity will be leading it. I'm not sure what their theme will be at this point, but it will be Dignity's turn to shape the agenda, and we look forward to that. So we'll see you then, and hopefully at other programs in the interim. Meanwhile, thank you again to those who, Marsie, and to Victoria and Diann and Marianne, and all who brought their wisdom to bear, and to all of you for being here. Please feel free to share this recording. We will make it available, because I do think this is something that a lot of people should hear. A lot of people should hear, especially going into the 50th anniversary of the Women's Ordination Conference. This is a wonderful experience of a particular group sharing its wisdom. For example, women religious might say what the ordination movement has meant to them. Women of color might say what it has meant to them. Women from a variety of settings, I think, women with disabilities could say what it has meant to them. I think this is really a very new way to begin to celebrate anniversaries, knowing that at the beginning we were not diverse, we are now, and we're becoming more so. And our doing this becomes, helps us to become more so. So that's part of the method in my madness on this one. Wonderful to be together. Thank you all. Lots of love. Bye-bye now. We're going to keep the Zoom open, but you're welcome to be part of the conversation.
And thank you to Carol and Shalhoub for managing the tech today.
Yay.
Thank you.
And let's look on the look on the chat. It looks like Waters had trouble getting in, maybe some others. So we have to.
I still never got in.
Yeah.
Mary, could you tell me the date of the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network?
Yes, it will be Wednesday, May the 13th. And
Thank you.
1 p.m. Eastern. Got it. Times I give Eastern, and then people figure, but 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. So. Okay. And I have no idea, we never know who's coming, but it's always a good conversation.
May 11th.
May 13th. Yeah.
May 13th.
May 13th, Wednesday.
Got it.
Yeah. And then we have the in-person meeting at the Academy of Religion. That will be in November in Denver this year. But the virtual meeting is this one.
Okay. Thanks.
Floor is open. Anybody? Continuing conversation. Great to see people we didn't greet early on, and wishing the travelers safe home. Marianne and Kathy Ann and your friends out there, have a safe trip and enjoy your day.